Welcome to Quiltripping Travel with Rose, a Big Blend radio podcast featuring award-winning travel writer and photographer, Rose Palmer. Everybody, welcome to the very first episode of Quiltripping Travel with Rose. She loves quilts and she loves to travel. And she travels the world. She travels the country. She goes to national parks. She loves to cruise, especially small ship cruises. She really loves to cruise. She does. That's how we've met her over the years. She's been on Big Blend Radio, and we've decided, hey, let's do some more because she just goes everywhere and comes back with awesome stories, awesome photography, and we just want more from Rose. So here it is. We are here every second Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time with a new episode. So check it out wherever you're listening to, whether it's Spotify or YouTube or Apple. Follow us there and you get to hear where Rose has been recently. So welcome back. I should say welcome back to your first episode. How are you, Rose?
I'm very well, thank you. And thank you so much for starting this journey with me. I'm so excited to be working on a regular basis with you.
Oh, no, we are excited too, because that means we get to get more stories from you too, not only podcasts. And so every time we do a show, look in the episode notes and you will see a link to a story. Today, we're doing a Success Insider. One of our shows is Success Express. It's a business and career show. And we love doing these insiders to find out what professionals, go through, what are their challenges, what makes them tick, what inspires them, and to learn from it. And so today's first episode, and there's other podcasts on this channel too from Rose's past interviews with us on her different destinations. But there's a link where you can see Rose has answered 10 Success Insider questions. So it's so much fun to get into this and find out why she got traveling, and then why did she get, into travel writing and the photography, which she is an awesome photographer. I think you were on 2 covers of our magazines. Is it 2, I think?
I think so, yeah.
2 Big Blend magazines, yeah. It's awesome.
Yep, whole bunch of awards, so yeah.
Yeah, so what did get you started in travel at first? I mean, was it something you did as a kid?
So, yes and no. I like to say that my first trip was a one-way ticket to the U.S. My family and I emigrated here when I was 9 from Romania. And that was, I guess you could say, my very first trip. And I remember on that flight, I have a couple of images that still stand out very vividly in my mind. There were some issues with the plane we were supposed to take. They replaced the plane, and they had to detour us into Istanbul to pick up some more passengers. And I remember flying over the city. Mind you, I was 9. We hadn't never left the country. This was in the height of communism. Romania, people did not leave. And so this was my first vision of anything outside of the country. And, we're talking mosques and minarets and totally different environment than what I had ever seen. And seeing this outside the airplane window, I was mesmerized. And I remember thinking to myself, all right, one day I do want to come here and see this. And, eventually I did when I was much, much older. And then on that same trip, we had to change flights in Belgium. And again, I remember walking through the airport and just being awed by everything I saw. And, 9-year-old girl, the one thing that sticks in my mind in the shops, I saw a Barbie doll dressed like in that black and white My Fair Lady costume that she wore, to the horse races. And, again, coming from Romania, not having much while we were there, seeing this doll and thinking, oh my, that was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. But that was my first trip. And, we came to the States and didn't travel much as my family was trying to, my parents were trying to, set up and make a living and a life for themselves. But then, as I became an adult, and especially once I met my husband, we would do national parks. We were in graduate school, and that was what we could afford, we would drive and we'd go to national parks. And then when we had children, same thing. A lot of our vacations every summer, the one big annual family vacation was going to one of the, or a couple of the national parks each summer. And then, from there, once, especially here, once I became an empty nester and all those, financial responsibilities were gone,
Yeah.
I was able to indulge that passion for travel and started traveling as much as I could. And now that I'm retired, I kind of feel like I have a time deadline. I don't know how long I'll be able to continue this pace. So I'm going as much and as often and as far as I can to get it all in.
That's awesome. I love that you have that attitude. So many people retire and go, now what? But I think, we're living longer as a species, right?
It
So
seems
that's
that
the
way.
exciting thing. Yeah. I mean, we are living longer but you never know what can happen in life, right? You wake up one day and, something's changed. So
Right.
go
Right.
get it while you can, like Janis Joplin sings,
Exactly.
man. Get it while you can. Do it and enjoy it. And the fact is, I think what's beautiful is that you're sharing it through photography. Your photos, like I was saying, are amazing, and your writing, and it's such a pleasure to work with. Honestly,
Well, thank
most sends
you.
things in. I
Thank
don't even.
you.
There's like no major editing or anything. I just go, oh, this is cool. I enjoy it. So it's no. I mean that's a big deal. And success is working together in partnerships. And I know in tourism we build relationships with CVBs, visitor bureaus, welcome centers, hotels, cruise lines like you do, we tour companies, we build these relationships, and it's important to nurture them from both sides, right? And I think that you
Right.
do that in an amazing way. And you're sharing your stories. So you're traveling. I don't know how to travel and enjoy it without it being something that's shared. Do you have that same? It's almost like a disease for me. Like everybody needs to know. I need to stand on the top of the mountain and bang the pots and pans. You need to come here. Do you feel that too?
Oh, definitely. And especially from a photography standpoint, I cannot be somewhere and if I see something that's just beautiful or unique or new or different, I have to take pictures. I just, and sometimes I'll be somewhere and I won't have my good camera. I'll have my cell phone. And even then, I pull it out and I'll take a photo and frame it. And I find that taking photos of where I am actually helps me both focus the experience and imprint it on my memory.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, and then when I'm traveling and I do interesting experiences or events or activities, I'm starting to think about, okay, what angle do I want to write about? What information do I need? What are some interesting stories that come out of this experience? Yeah, it's obviously when I was, younger and traveling with the family, I didn't think that way. But now since I've started the website and am, doing this quote unquote for an occupation, it doesn't go away. It's always there, but in a good way, in a really good way.
Mm-hmm. No. I think it's exciting too when you do photos. Do you come back home and then look at them and find things that you kind of like, ooh, I captured this, but I wasn't thinking of it that way when I was taking it, like a new story idea from your photos. And photos are such a great way to do your research.
Yes.
Thank goodness for Google Timelines too. Thank goodness.
Yes. I mean, I find now that a lot of times I'll take photos just because I know I won't remember everything and I don't always have time to take notes. And so I'll take, what I considered for myself documentary photos. They're just, okay, this is where I was, this is what I did,
Mm-hmm.
just so that I can remember the details. And then other times it'll be photos just trying to capture the essence or to produce something beautiful, to produce art.
Mm, that's cool. Yeah, to produce art. Yeah, you definitely do that. I still think the puffin fish is one of the best.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I was so thrilled to finally be able to see the puffins in Iceland and be able to be close enough with a long lens to get those amazing photos.
Mm. What training have you? Because I know you come from a chemist background, right? So
Yes.
she's a lady of drugs, but not that kind.
Well,
So,
no. Yeah, no, we
oh
wouldn't go there. No, not those kind. No.
no, I'm just like no, but that means you have like a brain that understands things that I go, that's fine print stuff that I don't want to know. I'll do a podcast on it and someone else talks through it. And that's great. I'm going to learn something, but don't bring the trigonometry. I can't even pronounce it. See, trigonometry calculator to me because I'll go, look at those little graphs and designs. Isn't that cute? So you've got one of those brains that can do that, which is really great when you travel, because when you go somewhere like Iceland, you start getting into this science and history and nature all merging together. So that's really cool that you have that. And that adds another layer, right, to the experience of what you're sharing and understanding, to what you're doing, I think, to be able to, because it's work becoming a chemist. Everybody I know in that field, they're super smart, man. I'm like, swap brains for a day. That's cool. But yeah, tell us a little bit about, the training to become a chemist is a whole big deal. But then the training to be a writer and photographer is, it's not just, hey, I can just write something down. I see that all the time. It's like when people started self-publishing books, then realizing, no, I still need an editor,
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. Well, my interest in chemistry actually started when I was in elementary school and in what we call middle school in 7th and 8th grade. My science teacher had a great science teacher, and as with all middle schools, you do a little bit of chemistry and you learn some of the basics. And then I had a great teacher in high school. Actually, I went to a Catholic high school, and one of the nuns was my chemistry teacher, and I was fascinated by the order and the logic of it. It just made so much sense. So then when I went to college, I majored both in chemistry and biology as an undergrad, thinking that maybe I might be interested in medical school. But then the more I kind of went through the courses in college, I realized that I really took much more to the chemistry side of it. And so then I went on and got my graduate degree, my doctorate in chemistry. And my husband is actually also has a doctorate in chemistry. We were in both college and graduate school together. But the thing that about chemistry, or I think a lot of the sciences that maybe people forget, is that there's a creative element. And especially in chemistry, I've made my degrees in organic chemistry, and so the aspect of trying to create new molecules, there is a creative side to it, and I think that's what really appealed to me. And so I don't find it that big of a leap or a stretch into what I do now. So people, when I tell them that I was a chemist, they're like, well, then how did you become a travel writer? Like, well, first of all, anyone that does anything in the sciences has to be able to write, because you've got to write, obviously, a thesis, and then you've got to write reports on what you did that people can read and understand. And so you learn to write, and you do a lot of writing throughout your career. Certainly I did. Travel writing is a little bit different, and the biggest challenge I had was going from the third person, which is how you write in a science, anything technical, to the first person. It felt really awkward at first. Like, wait a minute, I can use the word I when I'm writing. Now, it's taken a while, but now it feels quite natural. But the transition from the creative side of doing science to doing other creative things, I've always had it. I've always tried all sorts of crafty stuff when I was a mom with the kids, and knitting and crocheting,
quilting,
and then quilting and ceramics and stained glass. And I've dabbled in all sorts of things, but quilting is the one that has stuck over the years.
But that's storytelling. See, quilting is storytelling.
Anyway, yeah. Depends on what kind of quilts you do, but you're right. It can be storytelling. And then, photography. I got my first camera when I was 20 as a Christmas gift. My father had always dabbled a little bit in photography. I remember he and a family friend back in Romania, turning the bathroom into a dark room and printing family photos in black and white. And I have all these photos of me as a young child in black and white that they printed. So I guess I was exposed to that, and my uncle too, actually, in Romania. He actually also was a chemist, which is a little bit ironic. But then he also dabbled in a lot of different creative things, and including photography. And I remember before we left, visiting my grandparents, and he sat everybody down and took portraits of everyone, of my grandparents and my parents and myself and all, and then printed them up all in black and white. So I guess that background, that influence was always there. And then, I got my first camera when I was 20 and just kind of kept going with it. And
that's cool.
Traveled. I would take photos. I would take photos of the children growing up. And then we, moved on to digital, and, now talk about expanding the possibilities, because with film, you have to rely on somebody else to print it and interpret what you took and put it on paper. But now I have digitally, I have the freedom to do that, and with post-processing, and that just opened up a whole new world, which I just love.
That's the same, for us too, when we were printing the magazine. We're talking that before we started recording this, going from print magazine to digital. It's like, oh, there's a few changes from what you do as a PDF to digitize it and everything.
Right.
But it's like, wow, we can put a video or a podcast in there. It's like, wow, that's super cool. Like, you can't do that in print, but no matter what we did with print, whatever we put together, somehow it just was never what you thought. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's out of your control. And, creatives are control freaks about their creativity. Isn't that true?
Yes, yes, you're right. It's counterintuitive, but it's very true.
Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of look at it that way, and, but I love this story of, the going from the science side of it too. I had one of those microscopes as a kid, right? Love looking at things, and I loved biology, and I loved when we started learning about mitochondria and all of that. And then this is the nucleus cell and everything. And I remember drawing diagrams going, I could just do that. That's cool, doing those science drawings. So I wonder about them and, the molecules and the cells and everything. And then I look at quilting and go, I think there's like a tie between the two in a way. That you know what I mean? Just in that, because you look at each quilt piece almost like a cell. Is that getting woo-woo?
No, I never thought about it, but there's definitely at least to the quilts I like to make, there's definitely an order and a geometry, and I think that's why I like it, is because of the geometry and the different possibilities that you can do with the geometries and the colors, and then especially the colors, and then the different fabrics, and there's also a textural feel, handling the fabrics, and playing with the colors. I mean, sometimes I just like going into my little closet and looking at the different fabrics and all the different colors and thinking, okay, what am I going to do with these?
I want to design fabric. That's what I want to do. I want to be a fabric designer when I grow up. I've always wanted to do that. And living in Africa, in Kenya and South Africa, and everyone, Rose has got amazing photos on her Q&A. Again, link in the episode notes. Amazing photos of her adventures around the world. It really is pretty cool. And you take your quilts with you, and there's a giraffe in Nairobi, and I'm like, oh, that's my old home. Nancy and I used to live out there, and you see the giraffe with the quilt is special. Nancy was looking at it, and the fabric and what they did. Nancy used to do a lot of batiking. And I love that. I mean, and they do a lot of it there with the wax and everything. Right. I was like, this is cool. But the fabrics, I still have some in our storage unit. Two pieces that we call them. She has kaftans, and we've got the wraparounds. I can't remember what we call them, but this cloth. I mean, people went into, like, a piece of cloth was a piece of art.
Yes,
and I just would be like, I've used them as tablecloths and curtains and all kinds of things through the years. But I just, every time I look at it, I'm like, how much thought went into this design? Like, it's like how paisley is done and things. Like, imagine being the person designing paisley. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that quilt that you're talking about, with that I photographed with the giraffe, So that was actually my second time to Kenya. So by that point,
Mm.
the first time I bought fabrics, and those panels that are in that quilt, I purchased in on my first trip to Kenya. I collect fabric when I travel too, and thinking that, all right, at some point I'm hoping I can get back here, and then I was able to incorporate it into. So that's one side of the quilt, and the other side, which I didn't send you a photo of, is a large African printed panel that I think if you see it, you would recognize and say right away, oh, that's very African. That I incorporated it. So I'd like to make my quilts double-sided and make both sides interesting in some way, because
That's cool.
why not?
Well,
Why not?
yeah. I know an artist actually from Pennsylvania as well. I know you're in Pennsylvania and she's in Pennsylvania. And I interviewed her a couple times. She was an artist in residence for the National Parks Arts Foundation. And she went up to Fort Union National Monument in New Mexico. And she does quilt painting. It's like a whole other deal. Like she's doing quilts and painting, and it becomes a painted piece. It's like a whole other art form I didn't know even existed.
Yeah.
And so I love that you're doing this with your travels because it's really personalized, right? And you're looking in different ways, looking at what the culture background is. And one of the photos you have is on a the barn quilts. And we've done some of that, like through Kentucky. The barn quilt towards Maryland has a trail. I think it started out of Ohio or Iowa. I'm not sure, but
right. I think
really,
Ohio. Yeah.
it shares the story of a family or the family farm a lot of times.
Yes.
Which is cool.
Yes. So that was out in Oregon in Tualatin Valley, which is outside of Seattle. Beautiful wine country. It's in a part of the Willamette Valley. Beautiful area. And that was my first press trip. After becoming a travel writer, this barn trail, Quilt Barn Trail, was looking to promote their brand new trail that they had just developed in the last couple of years, and they saw my content, and so they invited me out there to travel around the area and get photos of the different quilt blocks on the barns. I loved it. I was in heaven those 3 days that I was out there, because I got to see all these beautiful painted quilt blocks on the barns and photograph them. And then, of course, great wine, great food. And as I said, that was my first press trip. And I was thinking, okay, if this is what it's like, I'm going to like this.
Sign me up. Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
Yes, exactly.
That is a beautiful area. Oregon's awesome. It really is an amazing state. So with the quilts, you doing this as part, Quiltripping is,
Yes.
your name of your blog and the name of the podcast now too. And so you bring in something completely different than other writers. And that's the other thing about blogging. I mean, it's really evolved, just like self-publishing and getting published and writing a book. It's really evolved, from where it started to where it is now, and savvy. The business stuff that you have to do, the marketing, the content, and the SEO, the social media. I mean, I tell Nancy, I'm like, well, if we do this, then I'm going to have to start a whole new thing on social media, and I don't want to.
Yeah, you're making me tired just talking about all that. And I did not know any of that when I started. So I retired early, and I did a little bit of travel. Then I thought, all right, well, I need to do something. What am I going to do now? And I was looking at other travel writers' blogs, especially folks that were on the more of my age. And I was reading them and looking at the photos, and they had won some awards through NACHA and other organizations. And I thought, oh, I can do that. I can write this. My photos are just as good. And went to the library. This was in the days when Borders was still around, and bought a book on how to start a website, and read through that, and started the website, not having a clue about all the.
Wait, was it Websites for Dummies? Remember those
yes,
big yellow books?
Yes, something like that. Yeah, something like that, pretty much. and having absolutely no clue, thinking, oh, I'm just going to share my stories and my photos and people will come, build it and they will come kind of thing. And I thought, all right, I'm going to write about my three passions, which are travel, photography, and quilting. Never mind that they're not related. And, of course, everybody these days it's all about, you got to be niche, niche, niche. And here I am writing about general travel and combining it with quilting. But you know what? That's fine. It's what I love to do. And this website is all about my loves and my passions. But I had no clue. I started writing and started, putting up some posts and all, joined NACHA, which is the North American Travel Journalists Association. And after like 3 or 4 months, and then on a whim entered their first competition for stories and photos, and just again thinking, okay, whatever, let me give it a try. And, to my surprise, I think I got, 3, 4 awards.
Wow.
But knew nothing about social media. And, so my daughter had to show me how to set up an Instagram account. And, I had to learn how to set up Facebook and how to do Facebook and, Twitter and all of that. And then, I kind of scoffed initially at SEO. It's like, oh, I don't need SEO, whatever. And then I remember reading somewhere, which finally clicked to me. It's like, well, what's the point of writing all this content on your website if nobody sees it,
Mm-hmm.
And if Google doesn't see it, then, no one's going to see it. And then I finally realized, oh, that's why I need SEO.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that same thing. Or Nancy always talks about that with artists, or writers or anybody in the arts. Like you create this, and we want to turn a blind eye to that other side that we have to do because we want to create. We want to create. That's our thing.
Yes.
That's what we want to do all day and all night. And travel's the same. Travel, create from our travels. And then there's this whole other side, and you're like, no, that's not part of the makeup. But then if you aren't out there with it, if no one's enjoying what you are creating, what's the point? Like if you're not displaying your paintings or, your quilts, and no one's seeing them, then you're creating and creating and creating and just stockpiling creativity. And it's like, oh, creativity is like it's a universal language, like music, right? It's this glue that, it eases people. It's medicine. And it also tells the truth, and it tells history, the truth of history, the truth of how people are feeling at a time. Like we talk about the fabrics, right? Aren't the fabric designs, you can tell by the design, their cultural history, and
Exactly. I mean, if you see prints from the 30s, it's from the 30s. Or if you see prints from the 70s, I mean, think about the colors. If for those of us that grew up in the 70s, late 60s, 70s,
tie-dye. Oh, it's like the
the
green kitchens and all of that, the green bathtubs.
Exactly, and that brown and that
shag carpets on
your
quilt.
And that kind of mustard
apple
yellow
greens. What was the mustard yellow?
I don't know.
Interesting. And the blue next to the yellow, the bright blue next to the mustard and the green. It was like, is this like trying to make a hamburger without the meat? Like what, what were we doing? But hey, it's cool. Now it's like, now people seek that out, it's so funny how history recycles. Yeah. Now with the quilts, I'm still fascinated about them being used in the Underground Railroad. I want to research this. To me, it's a rabbit hole that I probably will never come back out of. But I'm so fascinated about the history of quilts and how we should do a whole show on it. I think we'll have to do that. We'll have to do a show on quilts and quilting.
Count me in.
Otherwise we'll take over your Success Insider here talking quilts. But the whole Underground Railroad part and how they've played a role in healing. When you think about injured soldiers and things like that, how quilts have comforted people,
they were initially a functional item, right? And it was a way of recycling materials. And, they used to take the old dresses and shirts and clothes and patch them together and put some, old wool blanket in between and sew it up and turn it into a useful warm blanket that kept everybody warm and comfortable and comforting. And, these days, a lot of that's still present, but it's also moved into the art side of the genre.
Oh, we're going to have to do a cult show. Like, that's it. Because I want to go down the rabbit hole. I love rabbit holes. This is fun. So the social media side, you've had to learn all that now.
Yes,
and it's always changing. The SEO is
it
changing.
is.
Google's always changing. And hey, there's more than just Google out there. And the world has changed. Look at YouTube has changed. And who knew we were going to see YouTube on our TVs? Look how Netflix has changed from a disc to streaming.
Yeah,
All
and
of this is
Amazon, right? From
yeah.
buying books to, I only shop on Amazon now because it's so convenient, right? Who knew?
There's some good and bad in that, but except for when you're doing fabric, right? And when you're traveling, that's different. And I love to go in the stores and see things. But Nancy, I travel full time. We go to the store and I'm like, oh, isn't this nice? And then you go to like, let's get it. And then we're going, what are we going to do with it? Like, where are we going to put it in the car? We do travel with a Christmas ornament. We have a pickle from a Christmas shop.
Oh, everybody has to have a pickle. Yeah, right. On the Christmas.
It's a German tradition, and if you find the pickle, you get an extra present. So the pickle.
Oh, we never did that. Don't tell my kids that because they'll feel gypped. We always had the pickle on the tray, but we never did the extra present thing.
You didn't? Oh, no. You better not let them listen to this.
Don't tell them.
Yeah, they're gonna want to do that. So, social media, the writing, so everything takes time, and that's something we should talk about because as a travel writer and a photographer, a lot of times think like everybody looked at Anthony Bourdain thinking he had the easiest life, right? And I think he had an amazing career, and he was a fabulous writer. His writing was.
Yes. Oh, I wish I could write like that.
He right to the point, and yet poetic,
Yes.
and he wrote mysteries and everything too. And he was a little warped, which we all like, right? And
there's a very fine, if you look at history, there's a fine line between genius and creativity and madness. Just think of how many artists throughout history have crossed that line. I think.
And you're wearing your heart on the sleeve too, right?
Yes,
whenever you put something out. And travel writers get that. Sometimes people go, and say, we get comments here and there, and someone will say something on a podcast they shouldn't, and either edit it out or keep it authentic. And we've always done shows that were live, and now everything's pre-recorded because we travel full time. And trust me, it's not easy to be live, all the time. And so somebody will say something, and what are you going to do? If it was racist or discriminatory or whatever, we take it off. And if they were, they're not allowed back on, and we probably won't even if it aired live, we'll take it down if it's something like that because we don't promote that kind of thing. But there's something about being out there and connecting, but there's so much work and the travel. Getting back to that part of it, people say things. You have to be thick-skinned, and I think like he had that kind of, but not really, right? When you put in so much work, you're traveling, you go 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 go. Especially on a media trip, it's like a twirl around, right? It's a familiarization trip. So it is this constant, it's not a luxury like what we're saying, like it's awesome because you are experiencing these things and you get to see and hear things that a lot of regular travelers don't get that inside scoop. Right. I used to love delivering our print magazines because I could go in the back of the kitchen in the restaurant. You don't go from the front. You're always in the back and you're hanging out with the group. That was fun to me. It still is. I like going in through the back instead of the front and just getting the real what's going on. And that's how I learned how hard restaurants are to run and operate and work in the kitchen, what they're going through. And I got more compassion for restaurant workers from being there than eating there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And seeing what they go through. And travel writers get that. You're going to be at the front, but you're still experiencing that. And then you have to go home and even getting out there, right? You have to pack and all that, go home and then try and make sense of this whirlwind, do backup research and do social media. A lot of times we're doing social media at the time and it's like, go, 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 go. And then you have to get it out there. Then you have to do social media again. So when we do one destination, and oftentimes it's more than one article, and who needs what article, what outlet. So the time, I want people to understand that it's not luxury, but it is fun. And you have to be passionate and really enjoy it to do it, right?
Very much so. And that's what I did not know when I got into this, when I started that, first blog post. Like, because when you look at the final product, it looks great, right? You've got the beautiful written content, you've got the photos, it really brings the destination to life, hopefully. But and especially, if it's been from a media trip, you think, oh wow, they got a free trip to do this. But then once you get into it, like you said, it is work, and especially on media trips, because the schedules are packed. You're on a timeline. You have to follow that timeline because they've put a lot of thought and effort into it. So you need to, you're trying to be polite, and they're trying to present you with as many experiences and as much information as they can in a limited amount of time, because it costs them money to bring you there. And then you're trying to do social media while you're doing this, because usually it's expected. So you're doing Instagram and, for Twitter or TikTok or, whatever. And then, you come home and I have thousands of photos usually, and I have to weed through these and figure out, which ones am I going to use, and then post-process, which takes time, and then crafting the content. So, it's gotten a little bit easier, but some people can just sit down and write, and it sounds wonderful. And I have a feeling Anthony Bourdain was probably like that. But for me, it's work. I really have to think about it and figure out, what's the goal going to be of this story? How am I going to present it? How do I craft the sentences? What words do I want to use? So it does take some effort and time on my part, and and then there's still life. I mean, yes, I am retired, but I don't necessarily want to be doing this 8 hours a day, even though sometimes I do. And then usually I'm trying to fit it in between travels. The last couple of years I've been traveling somewhere every month. Sometimes I've traveled for 2-3 months at a time, and if I have to, I'll try and write. If I have a deadline or a commitment that I have to meet, then I will try and get it done while I'm traveling. But it's not always a vacation, but I do love it. Mm-hmm. I do love it. And I do I will take time off and do a vacation and think, okay, I may or may, it's personal. It's my husband and I, or just, we're with the kids or grandkids. And with the intent that, all right, I probably won't do anything with this, but if I do, I've got the content.
I know, because you're gonna, there's like, oh, we've done this, and maybe I'm gonna do a roundup of 10 cruises at some point, or
right.
include that in. When you're traveling and you're on the trips, right? There's people that are really good at going to their room, downloading their images, doing all that stuff. You're doing some social media while you're going. A lot of time, that's stuff that you're capturing on your phone, right?
Yes.
But there are some people that will leave the cocktail party early and go do all that. And I'm not one of those.
No, me either.
Because we're there. And it's like, I want the experience. Yes. I want to experience everything I can. And then later go and see what. Then later I'm like, okay, go to Google, see where you were when. Like, what did I do? And then look at the itineraries. Look at that. Because itineraries, I don't think any don't change. I mean, they always change up last minute. You may be going to a farm and the farmer's sick or something,
Right.
So a lot changes. And then I love the ones where they let you go on your own, and do some of your own time. So it's so hard to you have to turn it around quickly, because you will forget if you don't. You know what I mean? Right. There's that, but I don't want to do it while I'm there. So you're like me, let's stay at the cocktail party. It's more fun.
Well, and that's why I'm there, and that's why I travel, is because I want to experience all these different things, and that's why I'll take so many photos. And then when I look at my photos, that does help me bring back the memories of what I did, and also the emotions, the feelings I had while I was there. So if sometimes I do have to. It will be months after I do an activity or do a trip where I finally have time to write about it. And having the pictures and the notes does help me kind of put me back in the moment.
Mm. Okay, so from here, this is the first episode. Now, again,
Yes.
everyone, look in the episode notes for this show so you can read Rosa's Q&A where she talks about who she wants to have dinner with. She gives some advice and talks about a lot what we've talked about today. So check that out because there's some fun stuff in there. But I do hear that you want to be a musician for a day.
No, so I would love to have the ability, which is that's the difference. Would love to have the ability to be a musician, but I was not given that talent in any form whatsoever.
But you can photograph, write, and quilt. So I think you're ahead of the game, you know.
Yeah,
but is music part of it for you in the travels? Do you go and see?
Oh, yes.
Internationally, you know, like, hey, if I'm in Asia, I want to hear the drumming. If I'm in Africa, I want to hear the drumming and see the difference, right?
And when I plan my own trips, I try and look for some kind of a musical event, you know, a concert, whether, you know, a organ recital in a church, depending on where I am. But I you know, a flamenco dance in Barcelona. I do try and find some type of a musical event to attend because I enjoy it, and it's just a great way to connect with the culture.
Now, final question here because we're getting to know you. It's stuck in my brain now, right? If you had the opportunity to take a fam trip to space, would you do it? I mean, we all have those bucket list trips, right, that we still want to get to. But what about space? Because it's becoming a real deal now, right? People are being able to do it. And one day there's going to be media trips to space. I see it happening. It's going to. You know it's coming.
So the scientist in me would say, okay, the technology would have to be pretty advanced and pretty, you know, have been done a lot. So I'm going to let a lot of other people do it first, just to make sure that it works well. So here's a small little tidbit. When my husband and I were living in Houston for our first jobs after graduate school, we lived, you know, a couple of blocks from NASA. And we both applied for the space shuttle program, just on a whim, not really expecting to be accepted. And after I applied, so this was just a couple of, not too many years after the Challenger disaster. And after I applied, I remember laying in bed one night and thinking, okay, if my husband is sitting in the top of that rocket, you know, how would I feel? Or if I was sitting on top of that rocket, how would I feel? And it felt actually kind of scary. So I have to say that I wasn't too disappointed that neither one of us was accepted. On the other hand, you know, now I'm kind of on the other side of life. I've raised my family. I've had a career. At this point, there isn't anything to lose, right? So I guess I think I would have to say I probably would take it, depending on, because I would love to see our planet from space. It's one thing to see the photos, but to be out there in that blackness and see this bright, shining blue globe in the middle of nothing, and how fragile it is and how valuable it is to us. I think that would be just a totally inexplicable feeling and life-changing experience.
Like William Shatner, when he started crying when he talks about it, you know.
Yeah.
And I interviewed a musician who went up there with him. And I asked him, would you go to space? And then all of a sudden, it was like 6 months later, he goes, I have a funny story to tell you, but I can't tell you yet. And 6 months later, he was in space with Shatner. And I'm like, dude, no way.
Wow.
No. I'm like, dude, no way. We were in Pennsylvania when we interviewed him too. I don't know what's going on with Pennsylvania, but you guys have good breweries. I will say that. So everyone, again, check out the episode notes. And who knew that, you know, Rose was thinking about space all this time over the years.
No, I've been accused of being spacey. So
yeah, but I love your science background, and she's got some great people that she wants to have dinner with. I want to hang out when you do that. Can I come with you? I want to do that. But
It
everyone,
is an
quilt
interesting,
tripping.
yeah, it's an
Hmm.
interesting combination, isn't it? I was wondering what you
Yeah,
think of that.
I think it would be pretty cool. I would like to add Anthony Bourdain in there since we've talked about him a lot.
Yeah,
So let's put him
sure.
in there. I think he'll shake things up.
Oh,
I'd like to
definitely.
see him. Okay, I'm going to give one away, but him and Rick Steves talk.
Oh, that would be amazing.
That would be
That would
interesting. It
be
would be
so
interesting.
much fun. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, I listened to Rick Steves the other day interview people. Nancy and I were driving here where we are now, and listening to him interview representative tour guides and everything, representatives in it was Lisbon, Portugal, Hungary, Poland, about their political thing, their system, and how politics is happening, what's going on in their country versus ours. Isn't that interesting?
Oh, I have to
I
go
was like,
find that one.
and I was like, he goes, if you think politics and travel aren't hand in hand, they are. And I was like, yeah, you're so right. What's a travel writer talking politics about, right? But it's true because we see historically what happens when we go somewhere,
Mhm.
how politics is part of history and how it's shaped cultures and uprisings and positive uprisings and
Yeah.
negative ones. And so I thought it was really like I never thought of it from that way. And I thought he had and it was a really fascinating interview. So, folks, it's out on NPR somewhere. So if you can get a chance to listen to it, I encourage you to do so. Everyone, quiltripping.com is the website. Thanks for joining us here on the first episode.
Thank
There are more
you.
episodes in this, on the show page, and those are from our previous chats with Rose. So enjoy those and take care, everyone. Safe travels and have fun. Thanks, Rose.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for Quiltripping Travel with Rose, a Big Blend radio podcast featuring award-winning travel writer and photographer Rose Palmer. Join us for new episodes every second Thursday and keep up with Rose at quiltripping.com and follow us at bigblendradio.com.